Good afternoon, everyone. DMGeezerjim here to continue my classic module review series. Have been working through the D1, 2, 3 series. Actually had done the Giants prior as well. Actually, I need to move that over from Twitch now that it's past its date, but apologies. Continuing on with our series, we did D1 and 2, Descent in the Depths of the Earth. Followed that but with D3 Vault of the Drow, and I wanted to touch on the end series, the end of the GDQ series, Q1, Queen of the Demonweb Pits. Real quick, before we go too far into things, is do our normal, published in 1980. This is a PDF of the second publication of it, I guess you could say. The first one had some different art on the cover. Everything else is basically the same. Contrary to the prior entries in the series, David Sutherland wrote this module, advised by Gary Gygax. There's a neat little introduction, the preface that was written by Mr. Gygax that talks about the changes that were made, why just behind the scenes hoopla about why he didn't finish it out. Before we go too far, I do want to point out that this is the finale of the series, but there is actually, if you're interested in Loth, if you're interested in the demon webs and any of that kind of stuff, I would personally recommend investing in Expedition to the Demonweb Pits. Whether you are trying to flesh out Q1 or you want a better version of it, as much as I love the classics, Expedition to the Demonweb Pits does a much better job of presenting the demon web with a little bit more content that we're used to in modern stances. So always remember when I'm reviewing these classic modules. First and foremost, I love classics. Most of the time, given the choice, I'll run a classic. And honestly, Wizards of the Coast will run the classics. A lot of what they're putting out now are reprints of older stuff. I mean, we're getting really consistent with that, which isn't a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. So rather than waiting for Wizards, and number two, hoping that they reprint a classic that you used to play as a kid, just do it yourself. And that's kind of what we're doing. So I want to preface by saying I enjoy the classics. I really appreciate the classics. But in context of 43 to 45 years of publications, a lot has improved. So when I'm giving you the information in these module reviews, I'm trying to present them in context of what you'll need to do for 5th edition purposes, what you'll need to do for modern expectations, minis and maps, virtual tabletops, or whatever. These were primarily written back in the day. If you were lucky you had miniatures and a ruler, odds are you're playing Theater of the Mind, so there wasn't as much of an emphasis on a lot of that. So when I'm making the comments such as you don't have the maps, you'll need to make the maps. The maps weren't necessary in 1980, 1990, but they're definitely an expectation in 5th edition. So just kind of keep that into context. Whether I like the module or not is not here nor there. What we're discussing is how well do these translate to 5th edition. How good was the module when it was written, and how well can we use it moving forward? So on that to do, like I said, I want to set the preface out right now. Expedition to the Demon Webs is a far superior product. I will be doing that on my next module review to kind of capstone the series. As I say often, if you have questions, comments, concerns, man, throw them in the comments. I check the comments regularly. I would love to engage with you guys. We only learn by learning from each other. So if you have a disagreement, man, say something. I would be happy to have the discussion, and I might learn something from it as well. If there's something that you want to see, if there's something that you think I missed, please put it in the comments. Let's help each other learn. The whole point of this series is obviously not to listen to myself. Well, listen to myself talk to myself. I'm playing with that, but the point is that we're sharing information. I'm sharing information with you guys as the audience. If you see things that I'm missing, or if you see things that need some emphasis, please throw them in the comments. Let other people learn from our shared knowledge, as we go through that. So with all that being said, feel free to bomb my comments and stuff. Let's get to it. Queen of the Demonweb Pits, Module Q1, published in 1980 by TSR Hobbies. It came with a trifold, 3 separate maps, which was kind of big at the time, man, to get a outer cover and 2 inner cover jackets. Heck yeah, brother. Let's be honest, 2 of these were the front and back of the other one, but it was pretty big to get a double trifold in our module back in the day. Other than those, the maps right here, real quick before we get too far into the specifics of everything. Yes, this is the mapping that was given the Demon Web Very, very, very basic, but functional. I know a lot of DMs, such as myself, threw this away and redrew it. Didn't like the idea of the Queen of the Demon Webs, the Queen of the Drow, basically a goddess being trapped in this tiny little bitty area. And it's, let's be honest, there's way more to it than what we're seeing on the map. So you can actually use the map however you need to. There's plenty of other access. There's a lot of stuff that comes off of the Demon Web. The design in Expedition is much better. We'll cover that when we do that module, but it is what it is. The second major thing to keep in mind was the spider ship, where the main encounters with Loth will take place. A gigantic mechanical spider that can traverse planes. Pretty interesting. One of the early on cyberpunk or steampunk magically driven machinery. Oh, I'm sorry, Kitty. Eberron-esque thinking, whatever you want to do. But yeah, back in 1980, Loth's spider ship was ran by combustion engines and moved around like a gigantic robot. So, you know, precedence has been set for all of that stuff in the past. Okay, so let's get to the meat. I'm going to go ahead and leave the map up. We're going to go side-by-side panel as we just kind of thumb through it. I'm going to try to avoid going panel by panel, but, you know, if we need to, we will. Give me on the left tab, please. Sometimes I hate this fucker. It doesn't want to work with me as much as I want it to. I want you to now go left, and I want you. We're not looking at this one. We're looking at this one to go right. Okay, sorry. Just wanted to make sure that we had the map locked in. So the party is going to start out in Demon Queen with possession of a platinum egg that was found at the end of Vault of the Drow. This is the big MacGuffin. This is the big adventure hook. This is the thing that's going to propel your party, allow them access to the Demonweb Pits. As it was written, the party goes in, does the Vault of the Drow, takes advantage of the mistrust and the discord that's going on in the city, makes an assault on the High Temple of the High Fane of Loth, kills the High Priestess, gets away with a platinum egg of some sort. And as written, the party's supposed to make their journey back to the surface, like all the way back to the surface, and go, hey, we killed everyone, look at this egg. And then the quest givers send the party back so they can go through the portal that was found in the High Fane of Loth. That was as it was written, guys. DM to DM, you can straight MacGuffin for 5th edition purposes. That's doubling your travel time unless you're using random encounters. If you're using a living world type of a situation, then the trip back out from the under earth, the underdark, the depths of the earth, could be very interesting. If you want to hand wave it all and hand wave it, it's up to you. But that's the idea as it's written. They found this platinum egg. Within this egg are the keys to access the demon web and go further and further into it. Your party doesn't realize that right off. There is a pretty heavy-handed curse that's been put upon the egg. I don't necessarily know that you need to worry about enforcing that, but there can certainly be a way to, quote-unquote, force the party into the demon web as a continuation of D1 and 3. 1, 2, and 3. Okay? As we get a little bit farther into here, here's a big thing. Remember, the demon web is not on the material plane. The demon web is in the abyss. The abyss is not connected to it's the abyss, where all the demons go. Things work differently there. There is a very, very, very large, comprehensive list of changes that are made to cleric spells, druid spells, wizard magic users being wizards, which would also include your sorcerers and your warlocks and etc., etc. Basically, any spell user, odds are their arsenal is going to be adversely affected while they're here. Aerial Servant will have no effect, as it normally opens a channel to the elemental plane of air, which is unavailable here. Commune. Before the spell is cast, the cleric will realize that while in the abyss, contact cannot be made with their god. If they cast it anyway, the spell will have no effect. Control Weather. Spell's effect is limited to a 5-foot radius around the caster, will not affect the maelstrom or wind and fog in any way. On and on and on and on and on. So prior to you saying, I'm going to run this, Dungeon Masters, you need to make sure that you pull yourself a spreadsheet, notepad, whatever. Take note of how all of these spells are changed, and then obviously find the 5th edition or whatever edition you're using spells that align with these, and make sure that you make notes to adjust them. Your players should be at least 10th to 12th level as they go into the abyss. Your players have 0 room to complain. They're going to Loth's home realm. This is where she is a goddess. This is where she exerts her absolute influence. The puny magic of your mortal wizard is nothing here. The reach of your deity for your cleric is not going to penetrate to the depths of the abyss. So you have a lot of mechanical room to work with. I mean, you have precedents to make it difficult for these spells to work within the abyss. This should be something that you consider for anything. I think with Planescape launching in a couple weeks, I guess about a month now. No, about 3 weeks. We hopefully will see some codification of those as well. That we can expect spells to not function as they normally would in Alien Planes. Now, 5th edition Old Man Shaking Fist at Cloud, I can also completely see them not doing any of that because that's difficult for Dungeon Masters to track, and that's so hard on the players. So if you're an OG, if you're a hardcore, if you're a realist DM, understand that you have absolute sovereignty to alter magic when you're on an outer plane. This is a codified list of spells that are affected and magic items. Not just spells are listed, magic items. Here's a quick example of what was accepted back in 1st edition, 2nd edition. The source of the enchantment for these items is connected to the prime material plane. The further you get from your plane, the weaker the item gets. So if you have a +1 sword on the prime material plane, it's going to be a normal sword when you get to the Demonweb. Planescape took it further, but keep that in mind. Potions, rings, miscellaneous items. So there was a lot of errata listed at the start of this module for you, the Dungeon Master, to be aware of. These things do not work or work differently when you get to the Demonweb. I strongly recommend to keep the danger and the threat of this, and obviously to impart upon the players that Loth is the power here, that you make sure to alter, limit, or otherwise adjust their magic according to these tables, according to this list. Next is discussion of the details of the web. 20 feet wide, polished stone. As they look into the stone, they'll see the swirling, screaming faces of millions of trapped souls that have been turned into building blocks of the abyss. I'm going to go off to the right here a little bit as we look at the map. Understand, real quick, first level is the green. You can see it goes up and down and down and up and up and down. It kind of has a Mobius strip effect. The party will never notice an incline. There's never a slope. There's never a stairway. It always feels like they're moving flat, but there certainly are overpasses and underpasses. Overpasses can be used. Now, anytime where you see a heavy black line on your map versus the lighter line, that is an overpass, okay? The first level of the web, or excuse me, the third level, I think, is the white level, is a very big, convoluted maze of its own paths going over and under each other. You gotta definitely make sure that you're paying attention to the graphics of the map, or whatever you choose to design to make sure that you have the overpasses and the underpasses. For example, here, I'm gonna start right here at 10. I'm gonna go north and then northwest, and we'll follow it around. Flat, 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 overpass. The same level is underneath it here. Flat, 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 overpass. Forward under the pink. Over the pink, goes forward. Under its own level of the white. Oops, sorry, moving it backwards there. Come on, come back up. Let me zoom out a little bit. So yeah, it moves under, moves under, moves under, moves over, moves under. Then it moves back over itself, under itself, under itself, under itself, etc., etc., etc. So I could, pay attention to the map. It can't. Some of these levels are designed to confuse your players. This, as it is basically its own maze level. The third level of the Demonweb is truly a maze. So think about it that way. Make sure you're paying attention to the overpasses and underpasses and how the party can use them to go up and down. Wandering monsters are a thing. The majority of the wandering monsters in the Demonweb will be arachnid in some nature or demonic in some nature. Okay? But that's really it. That's all the information that you're given. If the party goes through the misty sides of the webs, of the tunnels are all constructed with this weird, misty, completely obscuring fog that makes up the walls. Your party can put their hands through it, they can put their arms through it, they can jump through it. They jump through it, they fall in the abyss, goodbye, bye-bye, so re-roll a new character, have fun. I do want to put that caveat here real quick. There is a lot of save versus or die, save versus or die, save versus or die as part of 1E. Save versus or die is not really a thing very often in 5E, so you might have to educate on some of the effects according to how you want to do that. Obviously, you're not going to see any difficulty check saving throws. If you're translating this to 5th edition, you're used to seeing a passive perception of DC will reveal this, that, or the other. That does not exist in these modules. The idea then was we're not supposed to be letting our players randomly, luckily determine what they see or not. They're supposed to be using their skills, their eyes, their role play, their problem solving to say, I want to look up, I want to look down, rather than going, what's your passive? 15. Oh, you notice ABC. That is not a part of the older modules. That system, the DC system, the auto check, the auto passive perception was not real then. It was all active searching. So make sure that you're adjusting accordingly for yourself, according for your group's expectations if you bring this forward to 5th edition. You're going to have to make up a lot of stuff, is what I'm trying to say. So then we get into the keys of the rooms. There's, I believe, 12 rooms on the lower 3 tiers, 4 on each level of the levels 1 through 3, and then you get into some extra portals on the 4th level once they find their way there. Each level, your party has to complete and use one of the keys that came in the egg to teleport to the next tier. Okay, the information is given to you. Now, one of the things I'm going to tell you straight out as we go into this, you're not getting battle maps for any of the web rooms. Well, you're getting them for some of them, but not separate from the module. Be ready to make some mapping. The plus side is the majority of these are square rooms, rectangular rooms, old school D&D design, not super complex. So you have some freedom to play with them to make them larger, make them smaller if you need to. Our first example is the chamber of the troll guards. When your party comes to door 1, 10 trolls are in here. We remember trolls are large creatures, right? So they're going to take up a little bit more space. 30-foot by 30-foot room is going to give us, what are we looking at? 60 by 60 square. More than enough space. 30 by 30 is more than enough space for 10 trolls. If they're all taking 60 by 60, 360, the 10 trolls are going to take up 40. That's going to leave about 300 squares, or 30-something squares for the party to move around in. Not 300, excuse me. Bad math. 30-something squares to move around in. So the room is going to be packed according to 5th edition numbers. If your party needs maneuvering room, if you want to give the trolls a better chance and not eat a fireball day 1 and everyone dies, maybe map the room out a little bit bigger. Spread the trolls around a little bit. But it's basically a guard room. The first room they walk into. The second room is a kind of a trap. It's a 10-foot by 10-foot cubicle with no apparent exits. And the wall opposite is a secret door that your party can find to go into a 40-foot by 40-foot room with a glyph of warding on it. Save versus fear at -4. If they fail their save, they leave and do not return. That's not a thing that happens in 5th edition anymore, but that was a 2nd edition thing. First, 2nd edition. If you failed your save to fear, you cannot return. If you got scared enough and ran away, there's nothing that you could do. No, the fear effect is too strong. You lost that room. That's not a big deal from this context of the adventure, but it's an interesting mechanic that was around back in 1st edition, 2nd edition that kept things lethal, that kept things final. You know, if you're a fan of Baldur's Gate 3, you probably a save scum and fool because there's been a lot of times that you pushed a button that you didn't mean to push, or you should have looked here and you didn't look it and you missed a whole big thing. That's based on old school D&D. 5th edition hands it to you all the time. So prepare accordingly for this. Now, this room is a cleric. Good cleric has 3 chicks on the other side of the bars that are werewolves that look like hot girls saying, please help us. He's torturing us. He's such a mean man. Will you please save us? This is your standard tried and true reversal deceptive trick. The cleric's right. These chicks are evil, horrifying beasts, but the party's not aware of that until combat engages, at which point they can either leave with the cleric or help the cleric kill the chicks in the cage or help the chicks in the cage get out, which case the cleric attacks them and the 3 girls turn into werewolves and la la la. So be very, that's an interesting room. The number 2, the Stronghold of Trows. It's going to test your RP skills as a DM. How good can you make the 3 damsels in distress appear in order to make the party potentially attack the good guy? That's what we're about here in the Abyss. We're level 12 now. We're not interested in being nice to our players. We're not interested in nerfing it. We're not interested in making it easy for them. We're interested in making it challenging, making everything a moral dilemma, and making the game hard. In which case, Q1 does a great job of giving you the tools to do that if you're capable of it. Room 3 on the first level is a 100-foot by 100-foot room with 66 gnolls. Okay, this is where old school versus new school can break down. 100-foot by room is definitely going to support that many enemies. A 100-foot room is big. You're looking at 20 by 20 battle squares. 10 by 10. 20 by 20. It's a lot of space. Quite a bit of space in there for 66 gnolls to be moving around. A lot of tokens for you to handle. DMs, your call, man. If you want to run a mass combat of 66 gnolls against a group of level 12s, you can certainly bet on pulling a couple of their spell slots out, but it shouldn't be very difficult for them. Oh, there's 3 Minotaurs as well. My apologies. Lots of gold, lots of stuff in here. A rope of climbing, a couple potions that are hidden in the room as well. So they finally get to room 4. They get to the first teleportation room. Okay. This is going to take them 70 foot by 70 foot and 110 foot high. Big old pyramid type of a room. Door sides opening in the center of the far wall. Floors littered with bones. In each of the 4 corners is a 5-foot ledge. Each of the ledges is supporting a type 1 demon. As soon as the party comes in, they're going to jump on the party and engage. Once the party wins, they're able to leave. Okay. Web level 2. So again, remember, you're in the abyss. You don't have to worry about geography. You don't have to worry about geometry. You're in a wild outer plane area. So if you want to add some funkiness to the rooms beyond the descriptions, feel free to. If you want to substitute some of the creatures out for other creatures, if you don't want to run 66 gnolls, run 10 flins. You get the same effect. You have to move less tokens. They'll actually survive 1 or 2 blasts from your party and make a little bit more of an engaging fight. The information is here. As always, Dungeon Masters, feel free to alter, feel free to adjust as you go. The magnetic chamber is another trap thing. There's 30 bugbears in there. A lodestone, big magical magnet in the middle of the room will suck people into it. If you're wearing full armor, iron steel armor, including magic, you'll be drawn to the magnet. Once the magnet is touched, or if any of the doors were open, 30 bugbears come in and start attacking from each room, or from each of the 4 doors here, okay? Very, very important as part of Q1. I failed to say this earlier. No descriptive box text. You need to know the room before you describe it to your players so you don't end up giving away the information about it. Typical for Gygaxian old classics, the descriptive box text wasn't a thing that was important until a little bit later in the production run. Remember, this is first edition AD&D, published 1980. This module was published before the Dungeon Master's Guide actually hit the market. So, yeah, how interesting is that? And, in hindsight, there's probably a few things that are conflicting, a few points of contention, but you're in the outer plane, so who cares, right? Okay. The Black Chamber is another tricky room, 150 by 80. There's Drow in here that are going over their tests. This is basically a non-player character fight. The Chamber of Opposition is a fun one. There's 20 ogres and a Mirror of Opposition. When the first person opens the door, the mirror is going to send an opposite of them out to attack the player. And then the ogre is going to jump in. It's a big fight. 20 ogres is a lot of hit points. Even in 5th edition standards, making them everything mushy and smushy, that's still 350-ish hit points to 500 hit points worth of ogres. I'm sorry, 600 plus hit points worth of ogres in one room. Plus a direct copy of whoever opened the door. If it was the rogue, you could have some serious DPS. If it was your paladin, that could be fun, right? So, not a hard room. None of these rooms or encounters on their own are very difficult to prepare for as long as you've read them in advance. One thing I do tip my hat for. Most of these are simple, unique, yet challenging encounters that are scattered throughout the web. A hard part is making sure that, like I said, you know what's going on before your party gets to there. Room 8, the second teleportation room. There's this weird island. The room is covered in blacky water to a depth of 20 feet. That little white platform and that circle in the middle are the only dry areas. If the party gets there and deals with the 2 illusions that are there, these 2 little guys that are hiding underwater will drop the ramp. Clunk. Now the party's in 20 feet of water with 4 demons attacking them Once they get done with the demons, they can the sphere that's in the egg will glow, allowing them to teleport to the next level. Okay. Level 3 is one of the more challenging ones, primarily because there is the big pyramid room, as you're seeing right here. This is its own major encounter, or it should be. You have 6 non-player characters, 6 Drow of varying levels and power. All of them are dual classed. 12th level fighter, 12th level magic user, 5th level fighter, 11th level cleric, 6th level fighter, so on and so forth. So these are very, very potent, powerful things. The description itself in the encounter is going to tell you as a dungeon master, be prepared, read this. This is a difficult encounter. Every one of the enemies is a valid spell user with good melee abilities. They're not worried about anything. You have the obligation to play smart here. The main thing to remember is when you look at this map, each of these doors has a different glyph of warning. As they go off, they're warning the party in here. There is no surprising the lieutenants of Loth. They're going to know the party's coming. They're going to be prepared. When the party walks in, they should be facing held actions of cure serious wounds or flame strike or cone of cold or whatever. Bomb the hell out of your party when they get here. They're level 12. They should have it. Maybe. This is where I'm going to rewind a little bit and talk about resources. How you handle your party's access to short rests and long rests is going to determine the difficulty of this demon web. The reflex used to be you cleared an area, you can camp out and long rest in it. The instructions of the module are very clear that there's only really one point that's safe for your party to take a long rest without rolling for random encounters and potentially disturbing the long rest. Short rests are a little bit more viable if you want. This is the demon web of the abyss. This thing could be crawling with spiders and driders and drow and demons and yockles and all of that if you want to as a dungeon master. But if you have it crawling with all this stuff, you can't let your party take rests because you're breaking your own logic there. If they can't go 50 feet without running into something, then how the hell are they going to go a 10-hour stretch of long resting without being disturbed? So that's something that you as a dungeon master need to prepare for early on. Am I going to give the party a couple stage areas to where they can long rest, or are they SOL? Once they hit the demon web, they're going to be lucky to get their short rests, and that's it. I love the difficulty of that, but then you're really going to, your party's going to have to be good, well-equipped, and well. So yeah, if the party's up for the challenge, don't let them have but one long rest in here when they get up to the 4th level, when it's finally safe enough. They can get a short rest here, a short rest there, and go from there. That's up to you, but keep in mind. And I wanted to pause and say that because if your party gets to the 10th room on level 3 without a single long rest after everything else they've run, this is probably the TPK moment. If you fight this smart, if you fight this well, if you use the spells that are laid out, come up with the battle plan and adhere to the battle plan when your party comes in, you're going to be able, this is going to be a super, super challenging encounter for your party, okay? Keep that in mind. The burial chamber is just a couple undead. There's some neat little loots in there. You can do some random loot tables there. The 3rd teleportation room is covered with demons. Once the demons are destroyed, they can go up. Level 4 is where it gets kind of freaky, okay? Level 4 sits above and beyond, 20 feet above the rest of the web. You don't even know it's there when you're going underneath it. You may pass under it, but it's so far above that you don't really notice it. The membrane, the fog turns into a membrane at this point. There's 8 doors. This is where Queen of the Demonweb Pits gets pretty thick for preparation in your lap, okay? Or it doesn't have to. Because we're in the abyss, Loth is a powerful goddess. She has access to other planes, and in fact, she's taken over a couple worlds, like material worlds, already at this point in the storyline, okay? The doors on level 4 are actually going to give your party access to each of these other strange either worlds or demi-planes. There is some information given for each of them. Depending on how you administer these, you might have to go a little bit more prep heavy. None of them are designed as they have to go in here and do all of this stuff. Most of them are kind of like windows into Lost Conquest, offering you the opportunity, offering the players and the dungeon master opportunity to expand the story out if they want. I'm not going to tell you yes, I'm not going to tell you no. I'm going to tell you be ready for a lot of prep if you do use this. The Kingdom of Care City. This is a Celtic-based world. The doorway looks out from the edge of a thickly overgrown garden of drooping weeds and gnarled, rotting trees, mildewed trees. The beginnings of a neatly manicured lawn can be seen 200 feet away. The grass extends as far as the eye can see, and dotted with orderly copses of trees and bright flower beds. A quarter mile away atop a small hill spans a small castle. This is an entire kingdom, neutral elves with evil tendencies. They call themselves the Pharisees. They cannot stand the touch of iron or steel. There's a little bit of an information given about the kingdom, what's going on with the kingdom, and why the party's here, or what the party can do here. So you find out Loth's Gate here is relatively new. They're watching it carefully. They're hoping to use each other, but they're not sure how much they can trust each other. So this is kind of a neutral ground type of a thing. Why is it here? To give your party somewhere different to go, something to do. There's no quest MacGuffin here. If your party wants to save a world from interference with Loth, then maybe you lean heavily into the roleplay while they're here, and they convince the Duke Alfric that a partnership with Loth is a bad thing. Maybe he gives them a magical item reward, or they get a long rest while they're here. That's the other good thing about some of these extra dimensional spaces. They'll get access to their deific powers. They'll be able to pray to their spells. Everything, once they leave the Demonweb, go to a different world, especially one on the prime material plane, excuse me, all their stuff starts working again. Spells start working, prayers, communes, all of that kind of stuff. So that's the plus side here. Even though I was just talking about how difficult it can be to get to this point without long rests, once they get to the upper level of the Demonweb, you have some space to let them stretch out their legs, play. You, as a dungeon master, now have the opportunity to either A, connect the Demonweb to your own worlds, use the Demonweb to get to other worlds, or just give your party some diversionary activities. The information here is enough for you to let your party get here and encounter some stuff. But aside from a select few, there's very few you must do this while you're here, okay? Almost like they're side adventures that weren't completed, but that's not a bad thing. The more freedom you have at this level, the better as a dungeon master. The Frozen Lands. This is one of the most successful campaigns. At the end of a frozen mountain chain, hundreds of miles long, using this area as a base before sending her armies to conquer the warmer human lands beyond. So this is talking about an entire world that Loth is in the process of conquering. They'll run into a series of forts as they progress along the mountain range if they want to go a couple hundred miles into the lands. There you go. Not a ton going on here. Just an example of Loth's warfare. Not a ton going on there it means either you can ignore it or you can add to it. Up to you. And again and on. The Great Ocean. This is a connection to a world that's a big floating, a big endless sea, a 5-mile diameter. The Great Ocean rages for thousands of miles and varies from tropical to Arctic, small little islands here and there. That's really it. Something, a material world that your party can go play with. On and on and on. I don't want to like I said, go into too much. If I can help it. The Black Gate. This is another nasty swamp that she's taken over. The Labyrinthine of Arachne is a little bit of an important one, okay? This is used by Loth as a breeding ground for spiders of all sorts. The 5 doors lead to a tunnel and passages that twist and connect to form a maze of chambers. So they'll enter a 100-foot square chamber, 5 doors on the opposite wall, left door open in one corner, 5 on the opposite wall. Each of those doors leads into a maze. There is no map given for your maze. The maze is supposed to be huge. And there are actually survivors within this the labyrinth itself. Why is it here? Just as an expression of content. This is where Loth has all of her spiders. What can you do to it? You can if your party's struggling, they need some more information. Maybe one of the survivors that's gone the farthest has been trapped in the labyrinth and they have to go rescue them. Or alternately, if they come across some survivors while they're fighting in the labyrinth, oh, A, B, C, D, F. This is your source of emergency MacGuffins. Or if your party pisses off Loth and they get banished into the mazes, they can fight their way back out of here. Maybe this is a fix to the lose condition. Your party got into a TPK somewhere along the line. They didn't get TPK. They got stripped down to their skivvies and dropped off in the maze so they could feed their spiders. So then you go into an entire survival type of a thing within the labyrinthine. Downside of that is it's a big. There's no even measurements given for the maze. We're talking extra planar space. It could be huge, as big as you want it to be, small as you want it to be, so on and so forth. There are survivors and fugitives and actual parties that can be found in here. So, that's a fun thing, the Labyrinthine of Arachne. Then you have Maldev, which is a interesting world of dwarfs that Loth is fighting against. The Night World of Vlad Tolenkov. I think this is the prior tie-in to... I think this was one of the inspirations for Ravenloft for the Domains of Dread. If you want a connection to the Domains of Dread, you can use G and use Vlad Tolenkov, a 15-level magic user vampire, who's recently been enlisted to Loth's aid, and he's gathering forces in his area. A bunch of undead, and there's the castle. Quick castle given if you want to go. Actually, I think that's for the prison, isn't it? No, that's for the Vlad's castle there. So you have kind of a Strahd thing going on in one of the connecting planes to the Demonweb Pits, so on and so forth. Lost Prison talks about, exactly what is it. It's just a horrible place that you get sent to. Big old island, one cage, and when you get sent to the cage, you're sitting there all alone until you die, and then you're reborn. And then we finally get to the spider ship of Loth, and this is where the meat is. This is where... ironically, I don't want to say conventional dungeon, but this is the first access you're going to have to conventional dungeon maps when your party gets to the spider ship. Okay, not going to go into a bunch of detail. This is definitely a high combat area. Once your party walks up that stairway, the assumption is eventually pretty quickly the ship is going to be put on high alert. Your party's going to be fighting against demons and demons, maybe a couple of Yugoloths, lots of spiders, undead, so on and so forth. A couple of frost giants, a couple of hill giants here and there. And of course, Loth, female driders. She got a pet white dragon. So it's a pretty thick dungeon. There's a wide variety of monsters, as was standard for first edition. They didn't care about ecology or zoology as much as they cared about cool stuff to fight. So you're going to have some cool stuff to fight that may not necessarily make sense for where it's at, the space of the room that it's in, whatever. You have certainly the discretion to adjust as necessary as the DM. So let's just kind of skip through here, and I want to get down to Loth herself. We're going to look at the first edition form stat block and going to kind of do some quick translations to 5th edition. But yeah, over the course of going through the spider ship, I don't want to talk too much about it. There's a lot of locations in here. There's some interesting stuff, but this is the most standard portion of the adventure. If you know how to read a map key, if you know how to run a dungeon, Loth's spider ship is actually the easiest part of the adventure to run. The demon web itself is very challenging. Handling the extra planar locations that connect to the 4th layer of the web can be very challenging. Deciding if you want to use 66 gnolls in combat is something. The spider ship in itself, not very hard to worry about. Not very. It's a bog. I don't want to say bog standard because it's an unusual design, but through and through, it is a standard dungeon. So once you finally get to the Demonweb Pits, things settle down into a normal play, which is kind of sounds anticlimactic. It's really not. It's going to be a challenging, tough adventure and fight at that point. By the time they get the Demonweb ship, they're not having long rests. They're not even going to be able to get a short rest once they start. So this is go time. So let's look at Loth, Demon Queen of Spiders, in her first edition form, which, real quick, just to close out the stream, we're going to do some translations on our stat blocks. Number appearing 1, armor class -10. Remember, the perfect armor class in 5th edition is 20. The perfect armor class in first edition was 0. So what I typically do is subtract 20, the first edition armor class from the 5th edition armor class, and then add that remainder to 20, and that's your armor class, if that makes sense to you. I'm looking at an armor class of -10 here, which would translate to a 30 armor class in 5th edition stats. I guess in her humanoid form, non-spider form, she would have an armor class of 22. 1 inch 9, 1 to 9, 15 inches. That's 30 foot of walking movement. That's going to be 60 feet of, or 45 feet of climb movement. Hit dice, 66 hit points at 16 hit dice. That's really low. Remember, hit dice worked different back in the day. So you're looking at probably at least 160 hit points, not including the Constitution bonus. 16 times 4 is going to be 64. So we're looking at probably 225 hit points minimum. Number of attack 1 and 1. Level value is 10 for destroying material form, 124k. That's going to translate to a plus 10 on her proficiency. Plus 16 is 4 divided by 4. So she's got a plus 14 to hit on her attack roll, which she should. Magic resistance 70 does not translate to 5th edition. Back in 1st edition, we rolled percentile dice to see if a spell would stick to the target before we rolled a savings throw. 5th edition turns it into legendary saves, which she should have, and magic resistance, which is an advantage on her saves. With a magic resistance of 70%, Loth should have both. Should have the legendary saves and the magic resistance as far as the advantage on that goes. Now, other than that, the main thing that she played out as was a very tanky caster. She has access to all of these clerical spells. She has access to all of these magical spells. And she got a crap ton of hit points and is possible to hit. This is prior to concentration. Remember, 1st edition concentration wasn't a thing. You cast a spell, it lasts as long as it did, and you went on with your day. You couldn't walk around with the spell Hunter's Mark floating in air for 14 hours. That's a 5e thing. So a lot of her potential, a lot of her potency with these spells is going to be reduced in 5th edition because of the concentration mechanic. She's going to be the one thing that 5 or 6 players are beating on. Odds are she's not going to pass 3 or 4 concentration checks per round. So make sure when you look at your spell uses that you're not dependent on the concentration spells to have her succeed. This is a goddess, and the party has walked into the goddess's house and duked on her carpet. Okay? You come with every damn thing you have. Real quick, let's look at her optional abilities. As a lesser goddess, she has certain attributes common to all divine beings. May choose not to use these, since a properly played Loth will easily destroy most invaders. This is your keyword. You're playing a goddess in her home. If you play this in a sissy, if you play this softly, if you don't have tactical knowledge, if you don't know how to plan, stage, and set up the environment for this encounter as well as maximize her, don't do it. Party's going to get all the way here to square off against Loth, and it's going to be a cake fight. It's going to be a cakewalk. It's going to be so anticlimactic if you as a dungeon master don't know how to execute tight combat. And that's kind of what I'm referring to. Don't depend on her concentration spells. Hold person, hold monster sound really fun. That's going to last a round. You're going to paralyze one guy. The rest of the other 4 are going to hit her. You're probably going to fail a concentration check. You wasted a spell slot. You wasted your action. You did nothing. Stay away from your concentration spells in a large combat. Alternatively, darkness, continual darkness, silence, stuff like that might be helpful for you. But I would definitely avoid trying to rely on charms, on hold persons, on anything that's going to be concentration based. When you look at this spell list, there might be some spells here that don't exist in 5th edition. She's a goddess. Feel free to change out her spells for whatever the F you want, man. 16th level cleric, 14th level magic user. Access to 5th and 6th, I believe, level spells on each tier. If you don't like what's here, change them out. Put in whatever you want. She's a goddess. She's your goddess. You're the dungeon master. You have all of the fun stuff. And then you have all of these extra abilities that are just innate. Teleport once per day, tongues, true seeing, gate once per day, phase door, read magic, shape change. These are, when she's in her spider form. You got all the other stats here. So a strength of 21, wisdom, charisma, constitution of 21. So that should have been 6 times. So I was off on her hit points. It should have been 96 plus 160, 256 hit points based on just dirty math. Okay. Plus 9 on her from her strength roll is going to add to the 10 for her level and add to the other 4 for her proficiency. So she's actually got an 18 to hit if you include the strength. 9 on damage is fair. 90%, 70% chance to know a magic user spell. So she can know almost any spell. Dexterity, give her some more armor class if you need to. Constitution, you can give her advantage on saving throws. You can give her some regeneration. Charisma, awe power. So, I mean, she actually has a built-in power of awe, whether you want to use fear, charm, whatever. Certainly you have all the saving throws here and all that. So, thus ends our trip to the expedition to the Demonweb Pits. Real quick, just for clarity's sake, let's look at the stat block for 5th edition Loth. Seeing as 5th edition loves to let us beat up on, loves to let our players beat up on, there we go, Spider Queen. Are we actually going to get a, no. Oh, holy shit, they're not going to stat block her? I am impressed. I am very impressed that we don't get a favor. Surely someone has. We've come this far. Let's go take a look at the monsters and see what we can find. Statue of Loth, Drow Priest of Loth, Brow Homebrew. If you're a D&D Beyond user, by the way, odds are a lot of the monsters that you've looked at that we're reviewing in our old content that haven't made the jump yet have probably been created by lore nerds and DMs and geeks like myself. Come on, give me the high. Someone's got to stat block her. It's going to take a second. There's been that many. Avatar of Loth. Let's look at our highest reviewed. This one's been added 136 times. So let's see what we got here. Armor class 25, hit point 1700. Yeah, let's look at the other one. Armor class, so on and on and on. Okay, but yeah, this kind of trues up with what we were talking about. Massive increase in armor class, massive increase in hit points. All of her saves, all of her resistances would be standard for a god. This user here is turned into a 9th level spellcaster, which is way low, but whatever. I think she's way higher than that, and I think they gave her spells way higher than that. It should have been a 20th level to have access to 9th level. But you can see this user altered the stat block to fit what they needed. You have the same freedom with your stat blocks when you're getting back to Loth. So, yeah, let's close this one up, man. Queen of the Demonweb Pits. An excellent presentation, and for its time, a very good conclusion for a very strong series. In modern terms, you're going to have to do a lot of work. You definitely gotta read this, reread this, and prep it out. It can make the jump to 5th edition with some work. It can, you know, the biggest thing that you're gonna have to adjust for, obviously, the existence of difficulty checks and skills in 5th edition that weren't part of the game in 1st edition. Okay, so you'll probably have to true up some mechanics to allow for those. Second thing is the lethality that's involved. If you want to do save versus constitution or die, you certainly have the room to do that. A lot of the dungeon, a lot of the rooms that are attached to the demon web are abstracted. They're described, but you're not getting your maps. So you probably will plan on doing a little bit of extra mapping. And then finally, when you get to the upper level of the Demonweb Pit, you're going to have access to, I believe, 8 different planes. You can take those as far as you want as a dungeon master, prepare as much as you want or as little as you want. The option is there. None of them are required to finish them. Every one of them is an extra place for just to show her power off, to show off Lost power and allow you, if you want to develop more, to do it. Cool. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and close this module series up. Q1, Queen of the Demonweb Pits, pretty good. Not as good as this one, though. We're going to take a look at this one next. I'm going to forewarn you if you're interested in this is your preview. This is a thick one. This is going to take us a little while to work through and talk about, but it is a far superior campaign if your party wants to deal with Loth. Not trying to talk bad about D1 through 3 and Q1. This is actually a little bit better. And honestly, Out of the Abyss borrows heavily from its story and its plot beats from Expedition to the Demonweb Pits. So, guys, DMGeezerjim here, signing out. Thank you for your time. Hopefully you've enjoyed yourself, learned something about the old Q1 Queen of the Demonwebs, and maybe you're thinking about, deciding to incorporate it into your campaign world. The classics are there. They're available for low prices. They take a little bit more work to translate to modern stance, but the plus side of that is it's a little bit more yours now. You have to do the work, so you're kind of homebrewing it into what you need it to do. Honestly, I would, in comparison to this over series overall, D1 and 2 was pretty decent. There's enough there for you to work with. D3 requires a ton of extra work for you to close all the gaps and figure out the political system and get your party involved without turning it into a city versus party fight. But Q1 Queen of the Demonweb Pits does a very good job of giving you everything you need and more to handle a trip into the Abyss and a confrontation of Loth. But yeah. Hey guys, thank you. Y'all have a good day. Catch me for my next series. Y'all be safe.